Okay, welcome to the deep dive. We're here to really cut through all that noise and get to the insights that actually matter. And today we've got a really fascinating collection for you. It's curated by Pythoness Programmer. She's a software engineering consultant. And this covers, let's see, the period from August 13th through the 23rd, 2025. So pretty current stuff. Our mission really is to navigate this, well, sometimes bewildering world where tech is just evolving so fast, constantly reshaping, our human experience. And this deep dive asks a pretty critical question, I think. In this world that's accelerating at AI speed, how do we make sure we're not just using the tech, but actually optimizing the human experience right alongside it? We'll look at everything from like the hidden pressures of AI at work to, well, the very fabric of how we think. It's all about finding that balance.
It's a huge question. And what really jumps out from Pythoness Programmer's picks this week is how all these different topics, AI designing physics experiments, social media bans, it seems unrelated, right? But they all kind of circle back to how we as people are adapting or maybe struggling in this tech landscape. So yeah, we'll touch on some key themes. That AI reality check, definitely putting the human at the center, understanding neurocomplexity and burnout, which is so important. Plus emerging tech, real impact, how it's hitting science and society, digital safety and ethics, how brands and governments are responding. That's brand stewardship and visibility and global tech politics. That sounds like a lot maybe, but it really all ties back to that human experience you mentioned.
Okay, let's jump right into that AI reality check then. The human side of AI in the workplace, because yeah, it's often pretty different from the hype, isn't it? There was this Howdy.com survey reported by Carolyn Christ, and it revealed something pretty striking. Get this. 1 in 5 workers feel pressure to use AI even when they're not really sure how. And even wilder, 1 in 6 pretend they're using it. I mean, you can almost picture it, right? Someone typing furiously, nodding, secretly just hoping nobody asks to see the output. It's almost darkly funny.
Oh, definitely. You can see it.
And this is happening when, like, 3/4 of workers are expected to use AI, officially or, unofficially. It just shows this weird pressure cooker environment.
It really does. And if you sort of place that survey in the bigger picture, Carolyn Christ's work highlights what you could call an AI development disconnect. You've got about 1 in 4 workers feeling just overwhelmed by all the AI developments, and almost a third saying that, the time it takes to learn it, use it, check its output, it adds up to pretty much the same time as their old methods.
Right. They're not always the magic productivity button it's sold as.
Exactly. It's clearly causing stress for a lot of people, and that really underscores what an HR Dive article was getting at, saying HR teams need to, well, step up. They should be building actual AI fluency programs, maybe tailored career paths, and help people genuinely integrate AI instead of just, faking it till they make it or burning out. It's about empowerment, not just pressure.
But then you have folks like AWS CEO Matt Garman, who has a, let's say, refreshingly blunt take on all this. He was quoted saying that firing junior staff because AI can supposedly do their jobs is, and this is a direct quote, the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's quite a strong counter-narrative to the usual AI is coming for your job sphere, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And his reasoning is really insightful. It speaks directly to that idea of putting the human at the center. He points out, look, junior staff are usually your least expensive employees. And crucially, they're often the most engaged with these new AI tools. They're figuring it out. He sort of asks, well, what kind of talent pipeline are you expecting in 10 years if you're not nurturing these people now?
Good point.
Right. For him, it's not about just churning out, quote, infinitely more lines of code, which he notes can often just be bad code anyway. It's about fostering critical thinking, creativity, a learning mindset. He sees AI as a tool to, augment and educate. In fact, he mentioned that over 80% of developers at AWS are using AI for all sorts of things, writing unit tests, documentation, even these more complex agentic workflows, where AI handles multi-step tasks almost on its own. It shows a much more collaborative vision.
That is a powerful counter-narrative, but isn't there still a tension? I mean, if AI makes junior roles more efficient, does that automatically mean companies hire more juniors? Or could they just hire fewer, but maybe more highly augmented ones? How do you really avoid that dumbest thing trap Garmin mentioned?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think Garmin's point implies the nature of those junior roles has to change. It becomes less about just, cranking out volume and more about the quality of the questions you ask, the problems you try to solve. So maybe companies start hiring more for curiosity, adaptability, or people they can train to use AI for the routine stuff, freeing them up for the novel challenges. The real win there isn't just efficiency. Maybe it's deeper, more complex problem solving down the line.
Okay, building on that practical side, let's look at Etsy. There was a case study from Jerome Bellagarda and Glenn Shao about using LLM's large language models for Etsy-specific questions, mostly for onboarding new folks. And they explored prompt engineering, basically, just crafting really good questions and instructions for the AI. Trying that instead of the super expensive, time-consuming process of fine-tuning the whole model.
Right, a much more agile approach. And the results were, well, revealing for internal stuff like travel and expense questions. They got pretty good accuracy, 86%, solid.
Okay.
But when they pointed it at the external seller forums where the data is, much messier, more opinionated, varied, accuracy dropped quite a bit, down to 72%. And this is where that problem of hallucinations really popped up.
The AI making stuff up.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Confidently wrong information. Like, it told people the cardholder pays the corporate card balance, not Etsy. Wrong. Or it claimed Etsy doesn't reimburse bag fees. Also wrong. And that just raises this huge question about reliability, doesn't it? How can you trust an AI if it sounds sure of itself but is completely off base, especially when it affects your users or customers?
Totally. But Etsy didn't just, give up. They came up with some pretty clever ways to handle it. One was basically teaching the LLM to say, I have no idea, when it genuinely didn't know. Which, okay, at least stops the confident falsehoods.
Let's start.
Another was something called chain of thought prompting, asking the AI not just what the answer is, but why it thinks so. And apparently that actually improved accuracy. It sort of forced the AI to double-check its reasoning.
Interesting.
But the most effective thing they did, and this seems really key, was asking the LLM to point to specific snippets from the source documents that backed up its answer.
Mm-hmm.
That directly helped flag potential hallucinations, letting a human easily verify the info. It addresses that reliability issue head-on.
Etsy's approach here isn't just a neat trick for them. It's almost like a mini blueprint for anyone deploying these LLMs. Don't just ask for the answer. Ask for the receipts, essentially. Ask for the proof, forcing it to admit uncertainty or cite its sources. That changes it from this mysterious black box into something you can actually verify. It makes reliability something you design for, not just hope for. And that's absolutely critical for, brand stewardship in this AI age.
Okay, so we've talked about the external pressures of AI. Let's shift focus inward for a bit. Let's talk about our own, internal operating systems, how we manage cognitive load, burnout, the real human experience side of things. There's this piece by Lindsay Macareth, 12 Things to Say to Your Gifted, Autistic, or ADHD Child. It really resonates, I think. The core message is about validating their reality, reframing struggles as strengths, and pointing them toward thriving, not just surviving.
It's such a powerful article because it gives language to experiences that are so often missed or misunderstood, especially under this umbrella of neurocomplexity and burnout. And what's really striking is how these truths, as she calls them, connect back to those broader themes we're seeing, like the stress in that AI workplace survey.
How so?
Well, for instance, Macareth suggests saying your exhaustion makes sense. Melting down after school isn't weakness. It's because holding it together all day is labor. That connects directly to the burnout people feel trying to keep up with tech demands at work. It's real work. Or achievement is not love. That speaks to perfectionism as a survival tactic, right? Which mirrors those intense workplace pressures to constantly perform. And burnout is not laziness. That retreat isn't disinterest. It's overwhelm. It highlights how vital setting limits is for sustainability. She also includes things like, your intensity is not too much, reminding us that those deep dives are fuel for innovators, the very people we need. And solitude is not rejection, pointing to that essential need to recharge, which gets lost in our always-on culture.
Yeah, it's like giving people, kids and adults, a new script for themselves. The article says, the world might misunderstand, but giving these words changes things. It helps break those cycles of burnout and silence by validating what's always been true. It's about understanding our own operating systems better.
Precisely. And this isn't just like a feel-good self-help thing. It's a critical lens for the workplace, too. When we hear that 1 in 4 workers feel overwhelmed by AI, that's not just a personal failing, it's a signal, right?
Yeah.
It signals that organizations need to understand the limits of the human operating system and build their tech strategies accordingly. Strategies that prevent burnout, not cause it. Valuing things like deep focus or needing solitude to recharge, like Macareth suggests. That's not just humane, it's actually essential for sustainable innovation. That's truly putting the human at the center.
Okay, from the very human, let's zoom out again to the cutting edge. AI's surprising impact on actual scientific discovery. This falls right into emerging tech, real impact. Anil Ananthaswamy wrote this piece in Wired. Okay, let's break this down. AI is now designing physics experiments for LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, that incredible machine that detects gravitational waves, tiny ripples in space-time.
Yeah, and what's wild here is the AI isn't just making small tweaks. It came up with designs that were totally alien, as the article puts it, counterintuitive. Like it suggested adding this weird 3-kilometer ring to the main LIGO setup.
A 3-kilometer ring, why?
Exactly. The human physicists, like Rana Adhikari mentioned in the piece, they initially thought it was ridiculous. It had, quote, no sense of symmetry or beauty. It didn't look elegant in the way physics solutions often do. But it turns out the AI was drawing on some obscure Russian theoretical physics principles that the humans had overlooked or maybe dismissed. And this bizarre-looking solution, it would actually boost LIGO's sensitivity by a huge amount, like 10 to 15%.
Wow. That's enormous for LIGO.
It really is. It kind of challenges our human biases about what a good solution looks like in science, doesn't it? Almost humbling.
Definitely.
It shows AI as this powerful tool for discovery, maybe precisely because it lacks our preconceptions. And it's not just LIGO. The article mentions AI finding new equations for how dark matter clumps together, even rediscovering basic physics principles like Lorentz symmetries just by analyzing data from the Large Hadron Collider. So it's serving as a real proof of principle. Now, humans are still doing, as they say, a lot of babysitting, guiding the AI, but it's definitely pushing the frontiers.
That is just phenomenal. Okay, now let's pivot completely. Still under emerging tech, real impact, but focused on something much more fundamental, maybe even mundane, handwriting. Angela Watercutter wrote this article called The End of Handwriting. It details this really interesting shift.
Yeah, it talks about the decline, obviously, because of keyboards and screens, but the interesting part is the debate about whether it actually matters. Sure, some of this may be nostalgia, but there are real cognitive benefits being discussed. Like the physical act of forming letters seems to help kids learn to read. And writing notes by hand often leads to better memory retention, maybe because you have to process the information more actively than just typing.
Makes sense.
We're even seeing things like character amnesia, people who speak languages like Chinese forgetting how to actually write the characters because they always type them using pinyin or other input methods. Plus, there are potential concerns about fine motor skills declining in kids who primarily interact with screens.
Right. But here's the twist, the really ironic part that brings AI back into it. With things like ChatGPT making it so easy to generate text, universities are apparently considering bringing back old-school longhand exams. The blue books.
No way. Seriously.
Yeah. To basically prevent plagiarism and force students to prove they actually understand the material in their own hand. Handwriting as, proof of human thought.
Wow. That's a fascinating loop.
Yeah.
Technology pushing handwriting out, and then another technology, AI, potentially pulling it back in as a kind of proof of life against bots. But as the article notes, quoting Ann Trubeck, who wrote a book on handwriting, this isn't a perfect solution either. It could bring back issues of discrimination against students whose handwriting isn't neat. Their ideas might get judged unfairly based on penmanship, regardless of their actual understanding.
Right, the legibility issue.
Exactly. So it solves one problem, proving human authorship, but potentially creates another bias issue.
Yeah.
It just shows how complex these tech-driven shifts are, and again, why we need to keep the human at the center of these discussions.
Okay, let's move into something absolutely critical. Digital safety and ethics. There's a really stark warning in a Wired article by Lily Hay Newman. The headline says it all. Highly sensitive medical cannabis patient data exposed by unsecured database. This isn't just abstract data, it's deeply personal.
It's a truly chilling incident and unfortunately not that uncommon. We're talking nearly 1 million records, over 300 gigabytes of incredibly sensitive personal and medical info from the Ohio Medical Alliance. Things like social security numbers, specific health conditions, anxiety, cancer, HIV government IDs, even get this, offender release cards in some cases.
Oh my God.
And the cause, a misconfigured database just sitting there, publicly accessible online. It's a brutal reminder of how vital constant vigilance is for data security. It really hammers home the ethical responsibility organizations have, especially when they hold health information. The potential for harm is just immense.
Absolutely. And connecting that need for protection to broader societal actions, let's look at Australia. They're making a really bold move regarding social media access for kids. This definitely falls under global tech politics and, social responsibility.
Yeah, Charlie Locke's article, Tweens Down Under, lays it out. Australia's got this social media minimum age bill. It sets the minimum age for having a social media account at 16. and it's set to take effect pretty soon, December 10th, 2025.
16. Wow, that's quite high compared to most platforms' official age of 13.
It is, and the motivations are pretty clear. They're aiming to improve adolescent mental health, boost internet literacy skills, and give parents more support. And public backing seems strong. Apparently, 77% of Australians support the move.
Okay.
But the stakes are high for the tech companies, too. They could face fines up to nearly $32 million if they fail to enforce it. It's a major regulatory push.
It certainly is, but, these kinds of sweeping bans often raise questions. The article mentions members of Australia's eSafety Youth Council, like Elena Matrevska and Raghu Vijayan, and they're voicing concerns, right? Like younger teens losing important spaces for connection, community, figuring out their identity. They also worry that if teens are just kicked off mainstream platforms, they might just migrate to, quote, darker corners of the internet that are harder to monitor.
That's a classic concern with bans.
Yeah. It suggests that maybe the ban needs to be coupled with really comprehensive education, not just an age gate. What's your take on navigating those trade-offs?
That's the core challenge in global tech politics, isn't it? You have regulators trying, rightly, to protect vulnerable groups. But these digital spaces are so deeply woven into young people's social lives and identities now. That point from the Youth Council about darker corners is really critical. A simple ban might just push problematic behavior underground, where it's even harder to address or offer support. So yeah, a balanced approach seems necessary. Robust education is key. Maybe even encouraging the development of platforms specifically designed for younger teens with built-in safety features, rather than just a universal cutoff age. It's complex.
And sticking with this theme of user control and safety, there's an interesting piece by Ben Weirdmuller, Why I'm All In on Zen Browser. This feels like a very personal take on digital safety and ethics, choosing your tools carefully.
Absolutely. What's really interesting is his specific concern. He contrasts browsers like Dia, which apparently send your browsing history to their servers to power contextual AI features with his choice, Zen browser. Zen is built on Firefox and prioritizes user privacy and features for, power users. He explicitly says sending browsing history is an absolute no-go for his work.
Right. That seems like a pretty clear line for many people.
It does, and it highlights this growing user awareness, I think. As AI gets baked into everything, people are starting to actively look for tools that actually respect their data and give them control. It's a demand for that human-at-the-center design philosophy, even down to the level of the web browser we choose.
Okay, let's try and tie some of these threads together now. How are organizations, companies, even governments managing their reputation, their brand stewardship and visibility? How are they navigating user trust in this tech age?
Well, if we look back, think about that Etsy example with the LLM hallucinations. Their whole effort to make the AI truthful, getting it to admit uncertainty, forcing it to cite sources from the seller forums, that is brand stewardship in action.
How so?
Because if the AI assistant gives bad advice that messes up a seller's business or confuses a buyer, that directly damages Etsy's brand trust and credibility. By working so hard to prevent that misleading information, they're actively protecting their relationship with their community. It's practical, ethical AI deployment serving the brand.
That makes sense. And what about the AWS perspective? Matt Garman's view on junior developers, his pushback against just replacing them with AI, his focus on critical thinking, creativity, the learning mindset, that feels like a form of internal brand stewardship almost.
I think that's a great way to put it, yes.
He's cultivating a certain kind of culture inside AWS, one that's robust, innovative, presumably more human-centric in its approach to development. And that internal culture inevitably shapes the products they build and strengthens their long-term reputation as a tech leader. It's building the brand from the inside by valuing the right human skills.
Exactly. And then finally, look at the Australian social media ban through this lens. It touches on global tech politics, but also stewardship. You could see the government through its e-safety office and listening to groups like the Youth Council trying to act as a steward for the digital environment of its citizens, especially younger ones.
Right. Protecting the brand of Australian digital life, maybe?
In a way, yeah. They're trying to influence how these massive global social media brands operate within their borders, how they maintain visibility with young users, but responsibly. It's all about managing public trust in the government's ability to protect and trust, or lack thereof, in the tech platforms themselves. It's a huge balancing act between access, safety, and responsibility. Hashtag tag outro.
So after covering all that ground, what does this all mean for you, trying to navigate this world-changing, light speed. This deep dive, curated by Pythoness Programmer, has really shown us, I think, the profound ways technology is reshaping things, our work, how we think, our privacy, our societies. From those hidden pressures of AI in the office to the deep value of human connection and just understanding our own minds to the absolute necessity of digital safety. It's a snapshot of a world grappling with huge change, isn't it? But always coming back to that core question, how do you keep the human at the center of it all?
It really does highlight that constant tension, doesn't it? You have the incredible potential AI discovering new physics, boosting efficiency, but it's always balanced against this critical need for human judgment, ethical guardrails, real digital safety, and just a fundamental understanding of human well-being, our cognitive limits. We're in this period where we're not just adopting tools anymore, we're kind of fundamentally redefining our relationship with the tools and with ourselves. And maybe the most impactful innovations going forward will be the ones that really get the ones that respect our human operating systems.
So the final thought maybe we can leave you with is this. As technology, especially AI, keeps accelerating like mad, how do we make sure we don't accidentally devalue essential human skills or compromise our privacy or mental health along the way? How do we actually build a future where these incredible innovations truly serve us instead of demanding that we constantly twist ourselves to adapt to them, often at a significant cost? It's definitely something for all of us to reflect on as we keep engaging with this landscape. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. We hope this gave you some valuable insights and maybe sparked some new ideas.